Right, let's move from branded cars now to the gaming industry, and you may or may not have seen the new Montecasino television ad and outdoor hoarding. A little about gambling and how we all do it, sometimes without realizing what exactly is riding on our decision. The ad was developed by the agency Halo and the strategy by Interbrand Sampson, and the campaign, I would suggest to you, raises some very interesting questions about the morals and ethics of casino advertising. With us now is Chris Coller of Interbrand Sampson, along with Dean Oelschig, Creative Director at Halo. To both of you, welcome and thank you very much for joining us. Chris, to you first. The premise is we all gamble in life, whether we like it or not. Flesh that out for me.
Well, you know, strategically, when we were faced with the brief of we want to normalize gaming and make it acceptable for society, it was a massive challenge for us. Where did we start? This wasn't going to be a creative campaign with lots of glitz and glamour. We needed to really understand the human insight and come to terms firstly with the moral dilemma of, is it normal to game? And for us, where we went with that was looking at how life's a gamble every day. That risk, that feel-alive moment, that exhilaration, that sort of clinched fists feeling of what is about to happen. That was what we try to cue in from the human insight perspective.
All right, Dean, how do you draw balance then between a creative execution, because Montecasino has got one thing in mind, and that's to get more footfall into the casino. But on the other hand, you also have to toe that responsible line that Chris has just referred to. Creatively, that's a fairly difficult challenge.
It's something we had to come to terms with as a creative agency. You know, we knew that to do this, we really had to get buy-in. So we did a lot of research on that. You know, we wanted to understand the moral implications of doing something like this. And so we spent a lot of time researching, and we had the briefing for about a year before it actually went onto air. And a lot of that time was spent asking those difficult questions back to clients. You know, why is this okay? What are the reasons? And you know, they're a blue chip company and listed on the stock exchange, and they don't want any kind of problem gamblers or addictive behavior on their floor. And you know, so once we got around that and bought into that, we were able to really explore this creatively.
Who's the campaign aimed at, do you think?
Well, from a target market, we identified a couple of sectors. One would be the current gamers, to try to normalise it with them. You know, there was an insight where...
When you say normalise it, what are you saying?
We're trying to make the experience of gaming a fun and acceptable form of entertainment. And you know, too often, so the current gamers would sit at a dinner party, half of them game, but feel uncomfortable to discuss it with their friends and family. So what we're trying to do is firstly target them and allow for that acceptance to occur, so that it's a discussed topic. And then obviously we're looking at the non-gamers and trying to get them to buy in to the fact that gaming is okay, that it's not irresponsible, that it's not associated with some of the other deadly sins, and make it an acceptable form of entertainment.
Dean, is it difficult to get that thought, that strategic thought, that insight, and then create a tonality around that?
It was quite a different process we went through, because I think the strategy that actually came out was the feel alive moment, the insight. It's not about winning or losing. It's the moment before that. You know, I always use the example of this feeling.
But I mean, it is about winning and losing. I mean, that's what gambling's about, surely.
If you go back to the 1999 Cricket World Cup, Alan Donald was run out. And
do we have to? Yeah.
We have to.
Yeah.
I think everyone has a memory associated to that. But even though we lost, everyone can remember the feeling that they had at that point. And I think it's still a special moment for a lot of South Africans, because it's so on top of mind, as opposed to other sporting events which might have faded away if we've won, whether we had won or lost. And I think that's the moment we try to key into from a strategic point of view, showing life as everyday, the gambles we do every day. That was just the creative execution of that strategy.
You asked that question of, it's surely about winning or losing. Our insight was that it's not about winning or losing. It's about the experience and the gaming, experiencing the enjoyment of the game itself. And that's where we needed to try and stay away
Chris
from.
Coller, I take the point. I understand the strategy. But there's also a responsibility. It's a pleasure, by the way. There's also a responsibility, having created this normal tone around gambling. How do you sustain that? Because if the ad works, you're going to get a lot more people in. You could create, surely, a lot more problem gamblers. In many ways, the follow-up to the campaign, I would suggest to you, is even more important than the original premise. Do you
agree more, Jeremy? And if we had Nolene Bruton sitting here with us, that's our next stage in the campaign. And I think I said it earlier, it's really important that this isn't a flash-in-the-pan TVC, but part of a long-term strategy. How do you prevent problem gaming is obviously a part of the business imperative. but it's also important that we take cognizance of the fact that this has got a long-term strategy in creating more acceptable.
Dean, in the short term, do you have a sense of how this is working at this point?
We've obviously been monitoring the response. It's been accepted, which has been amazing. What I like about the creative is that there's a moment for everyone in there. There's something that anyone can relate to.
Were you set a defined measurability? Does this have to achieve something, or is it simply about a perception change?
It's about a perception change. Measurability is an important part in any terms of communication. We didn't necessarily define those metrics up front, but we rather took on the bolder challenge of changing the perception. We looked at campaigns like...
in many ways, you're doing this for other casino groups as well, aren't you?
And that was the conversation that Nolene and I were having a lot of the time, is that should everybody be contributing to the expense of the campaign, because we are doing an industry job. And we were happy to do that as Montecasino, as Soho-san, being the forerunners in changing the perceptions around gaming.
Or you could just send an invoice out to everybody else. Guys, appreciate the insight. It's an interesting topic, and thank you very much for joining us. Chris Coller there, a senior partner at Interbrand Sampson, along with Dean Oelschig from the agency Halo. Next week, let me tell you this, with a smile and a suntan, Mags on Media in the south of France at the Cannes Advertising Festival. You can follow us daily on Facebook and on Twitter. And until then, I will say goodbye to you, and thank you for watching.